As you can see here, I've just been meshing around in the outbound dock. On the lower level, we see that we have a few of the containers in, mostly as placeholders at this time. Early on, when I was first forming the BSP, I thought, I'd like to be able to have this upper floor connect into this warehouse section and maybe go around on some catwalk up at the upper level. At the time, I was envisioning maybe a small catwalk around the outside edges and maybe a nice walk down the middle. But as I was putting it together, I realized it would work a lot better if I just had a nice complex catwalk system. I think this became one of the more defining sections of this map in general. At this point I have most of the catwalk in, although I didn't have many of the supports and whatnot. I did, however, also put in the support system of all the girders and whatnot in the ceiling. I went through a few different incarnations before I settled on this one. Most of them were just looking too complex, and altogether this one still is a bit more jarbled and compacted than I want, but it serves as a nice ceiling that brings the world in a little bit. It's also still possible to get on top, and in fact, that's one of the few things I wish I did have time to change, was just to rearrange all of the collision out here so that walking around up here isn't just a solid floor that you can see through. I'd really like the chance to be able to rework the collision so that you can actually fall through the larger gaps here. You may notice here on this far wall I added a very high key brick wall that I ultimately removed from the final version. Very glad about that. I also have a collapsed wall, as well as a section behind it. I thought it was cool at first. I put it together and I looked at it and I realized that I had just been wasting a lot of my time and I really had no intention to keep it. And I spent a lot of time moving away from that and working on other sections and only coming in every now and then to tinker with that little collapsed wall to make it look a little better, to make it flow a little better, because it really didn't seem to serve a good enough purpose. I wanted it though just to give a little bit of outside the box feel so that this whole warehouse was not just one solid cube shaped room. I don't think it really gave enough depth to it because it was just this tiny little room off on the side, and I would really need more tiny rooms off on the side to complete the intended goal. I also have a lower section than the floor itself. I have this mostly because when I was thinking about the initial diagram that I drew indicating how this section should form, I had drawn it into a multi-tiered system, and simply having one catwalk over one floor isn't very multi-tiered, it's just two. So this basement goalie serves as a third tier to add a third level of dimension to this section. Moving along, you'll notice that I also added some textures, or materials, whatever they're called now, to the hallways in the office section. I spent a lot of time trying to find something that I think would work really well, but there wasn't a whole lot of really good textures to just work for this area. And I wasn't going to build all the walls out of static meshes because I wasn't seeing any static meshes that were really suitable. This wasn't a highly decorative and ornate thing, it's just some bland walls, so it still remains made out of BSP. I did find a texture that I did like, and overall I'm very pleased with it, although I wish I could have found a few other textures that have worked well so I could have varied it up and made it look different in the different sectors. Of course, I never found a material that worked exactly right, but this one here I made a very small tweak, and that very small tweak involved nothing more than lining it up so that you can't see that it's really a very decorative looking Japanese styled texture, which doesn't match the rest of the environment. But with just a little bit of texture panning, it does. Finally, you will also see that I have added some sky. I'm still not pleased with the notion that we have a big ol' sky dome instead of a sky box, because I still wind up selecting it every now and then, but I guess it's fine. At least it gets the job done. I copied this out of, well, one of the levels, and I thought it was going to come in a lot darker, but for some reason I still have this blatant sun staring at me, which seemed far brighter than I wanted for this level. But I decided to just work with it. It's at sunset, that's cool, we have a sun shining, the rest of the sky looks like what I wanted it to. I can live with that. I also found all of these city meshes that were just fantastic. Oh man, I thought I was going to have to build everything out of walls and such. I did have a few such buildings around the structure to make it look a little bit better than jumping straight to this city mesh that doesn't quite match what I have the rest of the level looking like. That's pretty much it. I don't know what more to say about it. Sky and cityscape. It's nice. I'm glad I found it.